Zoroastrianism, Islam, and Sikhism, one name, asks, was James the Just a Judaizer? Uh, the answer is no. Peter was at some points and had to learn, I mean, a couple times, even a sheet coming down from heaven with one of the most unclean animals, an alligator, which is far more unclean than a pig, um, saying kill and eat. This is symbolic of go to the Gentiles and these what I've deemed to be clean. How dare you say it's unclean? But James at the Council of Jerusalem, after he hears what Paul and Barnabas did in Peter's decision, says, all right. And twice he reiterates what would become known as the Noahide laws. Now, this was at a period when Judaism and Christianity were not different from each other in a lot of ways. And people see this as Christianity was more Jewish. But the Noahide laws don't appear in Genesis. And the first time the Noahide laws appear are in the book of Acts. And they don't appear anywhere else for a long time. And then they appear in rabbinical traditions, as do some of the prayers of Peter. And the Noahide laws come directly from James, because James said for Jews to practice their ancient traditions, fine. But the Gentiles shouldn't have to practice these. Judaizers were those who went to Galatia, Gentiles who were converted by Paul. And then these people came in and said, oh no, you also have to be Jewish too, to some degree. Circumcision, obeying these other laws that, you have to be Jewish as well as Christian. But the Noahide laws really are the laws that were set down by James at the Council of Jerusalem, and he reiterates them twice. So for the Gentiles, no, it just abstain from strangled things, flee from fornication, sexual immorality, strangled things, and believe in one God. Do not murder and stuff like that. So, no, James wasn't. And even when he wrote his epistle, people see it as anti-Pauline. It's not. It's just a different take on, a different view, and actually complements the Pauline works very well. But no, he was not the Judaizers. The Judaizers were those who, some of them weren't, many of them weren't even Jews. They were Christians who said, grace isn't enough. Let's try to attach a lot of this stuff from the Old Covenant, which has gone away. Or you need to be acting Jewish to be Christian, or following these law codes of sorts to be a Christian. No, so James probably practiced the Jewish law until the day he died, but he didn't believe that it was necessary for the Gentiles to do so. Or even successive generations after him. Peter struggles more with this, right? But prior to the Council of Jerusalem. So no, he wasn't. And one thing that was because before the before the Council of Jerusalem, and before the rabbis took stuff from James, because James was a respected rabbi in Jerusalem, and there was probably many people that didn't even know he was a Christian. He was a follower of the sage Jesus, but they were the followers of the way. Christianity wasn't a separate movement at the time. So the Jews took these things, even though they were Christians, and but they were said by Noah in the Torah, and they weren't. Because for the longest time, you were a Jew, chosen people of God, and everybody else was totally cut off from God, because the only way to God was through the Torah and Moses, right? But no, James was not a Judaizer. The good description of Judaizers is in Galatians, and also what Peter was doing early on, and his stiff neck towards interacting with Gentiles, and then him going back on acting like a Jew around the Jews and shunning the Gentiles, basically, who he had been eating quote unquote unclean foods with. So he had fallen into habits of Judaizer-ish things, but by the end he was not a Judaizer. But as for James, no. James is just, if he kept the Jewish traditions till the day he died, fine. The temple wasn't destroyed yet when James was executed. But obviously, from his writings and from what we know of the Council of Jerusalem, he did not expect the Gentiles to, accept the kosher laws or pretty much anything, just to be moral men, right? Peace to you. Great question. Great question.